to us about individual counters, but also about the larger defense pack to start off with, Ambareesh. Positive with regard to the way defense is shaping up and what it could hold in store in terms of how the budget will likely play out in February. You think defense could well be a sector which could benefit rather from the budget in a big fashion?
See, defense has always been a focus. If you see the last couple of years, defense has been a focus for the government. And clearly the order flows clearly show that also. But the bigger issue for the defense space in the last, especially the last 1.5, 2 years, has been the capacity bottleneck. And because of which execution issues, were rising. In fact, if you look at HAL, if you look at some of the shipbuilders, I think this was an issue. But now, in case the delivery bottlenecks are removed by capacity increasing faster, utilizing the private sector, I think if that is announced in the budget, I think that should be positive for the defense space. I don't think orders are an issue. It is going to be the delivery. And if that is sorted out, I think it'll be a big positive for the defense space.
Okay, so that's the take coming in on the defense space. Yes, of course, lots to watch out for in the budget, and defense is going to be an important segment. Kunal, your take on some of the defense names on the charts, HAL, BEL, what's looking good, or slightly smaller names also if they look interesting at the moment?
See, right now, the stronger one is, of course, only BEL. But the other names like HAL, if I can club maybe the shipping companies like GRSC, etc., these stocks are weak on the charts on the short to medium term basis because these stocks have fallen below their respective 200 moving averages. That, I believe, is a bigger concern for these stocks. And we've seen on the daily, weekly charts that the breakdown is more prominent on the stocks specifically which have fallen below their neutral to negative territories in terms of the indicators. So this probably calls in a zone where many of the defense counters would go into a very steady kind of a downtrend for themselves, or maybe I'll call it as a drift for themselves on the downside, maybe not a sharper correction, because the fact that many of these stocks have already fallen by almost 30 to 40% when you look at this from their 2024 highs. So that intensity of correction may not be huge for many of these names. These stocks are going through maybe a time-wise or a broad-based drift on the downside. There would come a point where over the next maybe couple of months, you would probably expect that many of these stocks come into an oversold territory. That's where the trade would start to look attractive. As of now, it's only BEL, the only, I think if I'm not wrong, the only one of the stronger names from the defense pack, which is holding above the 200 moving average, which is looking extremely strong.
Interesting. Okay. Some of the other buzzers, and there are plenty of them, frankly, in the market today. We have an Aavas Financiers. Let's pull that one up. That one also doing Tele. Volumes are very, very strong. We've seen a surge in volumes. That one is doing 13 times. Supreme Industries is the other one. Kunal, any of these on your radar just on the back of the very strong volumes we are seeing?
Yeah, I think Supreme Industries could be one of the names to watch out for because in the last 2.5 odd months, the stock has fallen very sharply from I think 4,800 levels to now 3,300 mark, which the stock hit yesterday. So I think in that context, this could be a potential retest of the previous close for Supreme Industries. TTML, I'll probably give it a skip because I think names like TTML and MTNL, etc., they tend to go into those multi-day spike, high volumes, but then they lack follow-through on the upside, potentially over the next few days of the such kind of a candlestick pattern. So that's why I would probably avoid these names. But yeah, Supreme Industries could be a case where looks like that this 3,300 mark as a support. If it holds on for the stock, then I think that could probably form a near to medium term bottom for itself.
Okay, so that's
like stocks which close at the low point of the day after such kind of a sharp intraday correction, 5% correction, and it's right now at the day's low, which means potentially the stock should end closer to its day's low. That doesn't augur very well for the stock price, and that generally indicates that maybe I think over the next couple of days, the move which you've seen today should have a follow-through up move. So, what happens in these kind of cases many a times is that there's a minor counter rally, but that counter rally generally gets sold into by a matter of say percentage point or 1.5 odd percentage point for the stock price, which means potentially 1240 odd mark for Axis Bank could act as now a major short-term resistance for the stock and could be a chance where the stock may drag and fall below the 1200 levels.
And Kunal, does that mean that it's a short candidate for tomorrow. Is that the way one reads it, or you just wouldn't trade this one?
Yeah, it's a short candidate for tomorrow, but what happens is there is a minor counter rally which happens at start, because tomorrow what happens is, if in case the market opens a little bit more softer and you see the stock trading down by half a percentage points, traders would want to close their positions. So there is this minor counter rally which happens. That's a zone where fresh traders, they come back and they initiate fresh shorts. That level I think could be closer to 1240.
Okay.
Mr. Baliga, your view on the private sector banking space right now, how that compares versus PSUs? Where does your interest lie in the entire financials pocket? If at all, you prefer NBFCs over the banking names, how are you placed there?
Among the banks, I would surely prefer the PSU banking space as compared to the private sector ones. And anyway, we have seen that there's been underperformance from the private sector banks in the last couple of months, whereas we've seen an extremely good run of the PSU banks. I think that should continue at least in the foreseeable 2 to 3 quarters, because quarter on quarter we have seen performance improving in terms of the financials, the balance sheets have improved quite a lot. And what we hear now is finally there will be a consolidation. Although the ministry has denied it, I believe that should happen over the next 3 to 4 quarters. So post-consolidation, we'll just have possibly 4 or 5 large PSU banks. And among them, we'll clearly have SBI would anyway be there. Along with that, it will be Bank of Baroda, PNB and Canara Bank. This is my understanding. So, these are the 4 stocks where I would surely put my bets on. And if you're talking of NBFCs, although gold finance companies have been, doing extremely well, at this point of time, I would possibly look at the housing finance companies, and that too into the affordable housing finance.
Interesting. Within affordable housing finance, Ambareesh, there's an Awas, there's an Aptis, there's an Aadhar, and there's a Home First. Which is your pick within this pack, or would you go for some of the more larger names, PNB Housing and the LIC Housing and the likes?
No, I would possibly go in with Awas,
Okay.
being in tier 2, tier 3 and rural areas. And that's where I see, again, if you're talking of which part of the economy we should see an extremely good sort of a bounce back, it would be more of rural and tier 3, tier 4. And that's where Awas is.
We're getting word from government sources as of now that Washington has softened their demand for access to the Indian farm sector. Remember, earlier in the day, we also had some comments coming in on how India is not willing to open up fully and entirely our agri space, rather, for the American interests. So that is the word coming in from government sources. They also tell us that negotiator level talks for the India-US trade deal have concluded, and the future of this trade deal now hinges on ministerial intervention. That is the latest word that we're getting when it comes to the India-US trade deal. Just want to see what the market is taking this as, what is happening over there. A slight bit of a further decline coming in on the market on the back of this. 25,850 is where we have reached the day's low. Almost 0.7% cut coming in. You have Nifty Bank also, that's slid a little bit. Sensex also 0.7% lower. Cuts have amplified further on Axis Bank, Eternal, JSW Steel. Just want to see what some of the stocks that are dependent a lot on exports or export themed stocks, like your textiles, jewelry, footwear, shrimp stocks, some of the fertilizer stocks, agri stocks. Let's fire some of those and see how they are reacting in trade on the back of this update coming in on the India-US trade deal. We'll take you through that in just a minute. But yes, that is the latest update coming in on the US-India trade deal. Mr. Baliga, your view over here, we don't seem to have any further clarity here, and now we are understanding from sources that the next phase here hinges on ministerial intervention. Which way do you think this could go?
No, if you're talking about a month back, the markets were, very hopeful that the deal will happen in November, and then we are talking of early December. But now, the way things are going, I don't think the markets are expecting the deal even by March. So I think that is out of the way. But in case it happens because of ministerial intervention, if it happens, I think it'll be a bonus for the markets, and that could be a trigger. But despite that, we have seen that the trade deficit, is at a low, which is extremely positive. I think the only negative which has happened out of all this is the rupee, which has corrected sharply. Other than that, it's quite clear that India is not going to bend as far as the agri space is concerned, and that is also positive from a longer term perspective. So, I will not be too concerned as of now as far as the US-India trade deal goes. But in case it happens, yes, like I said, it will be a very positive trigger for the markets.
Okay, interesting. All right. Now, Ambareesh, would you have a view with regard to a Vedanta at all? Would you buy at these levels? And likely, what's the kind of upside you see from here of this entire value unlocking, which could be at play?
See, I mean, Vedanta again, I mean, people have been expecting, I mean, the demerger to happen much earlier than, I mean, the way it was going. And then again, there was a talk that it may not happen, I mean, even in the current financial year. But as things are, I think it should happen now by March 2026. And that is extremely positive for Vedanta shareholders because that will actually have a lot of value unlocking. So as a merged entity, clearly see the prices possibly going up to 640 levels. And post the demerger, I think, I mean, the sum of parts could be higher than that.
Okay, so that's on Vedanta. Kunal, we were talking about how the realty index is the one that's under the most pressure today. All indices on the sectoral front now have come in the red, including FMCG. So pressure has clearly got into the entire pack of stocks today. But Nifty Realty, Kunal, something like a Brigade, Godrej Properties, Anantraj, are all seeing cuts between 2 and 3%. Would now be a good time to buy this dip or stay away?
Stay away, I would say, because realty generally performs when there's momentum and the sentiment is positive in the markets. Right now, there is too much of uncertainty. That's why you're seeing that the realty stocks, they go into that phase of a rally, but then those rallies are not very strong, predominant trends for the realty stocks or the real estate names. That's why the rally tends to fizzle out very quickly, and you typically see these stocks retesting their previous lows, and that's apparently been the pattern for the realty names for the last 5-6 months, from the June highs, I think, for the real estate index around the 1000 to 1050 levels, to now current levels where the realty index is almost at 870 mark, which is very close towards a breakdown of the previous 5 to 6 month swing low. So that's the concern for the realty index. I would be happy if the realty index gets into a confirmation of a breakout, and to buy it maybe at a slight higher levels. So say closer to 920, 925 on the realty index could be a good breakout point for the index, and that's where I would believe that we may tend to see a lot of opportunities in terms of trades. Yes, the likes of Godrej Properties, Oberoi Realty, DLF, etc., they are the ones which one should be focusing on. But I believe purely in terms of momentum, it's lacking for the realty stocks.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. And within any stocks within the Alcobev industry at all that you would play, Ambareesh? It's been again an industry which has not shown as good a return, and maybe in the rotational trade, do you believe that this could come to the fore at all, or are valuations keeping you away from these?
No, instead of Alcobev, I would possibly look at something like a Varun Beverages, which is now getting into Alcobev in Africa. And has, I mean, this stock has underperformed, no doubt, because of Reliance's entry through Campa. But again, we have seen the last couple of months that it has not really affected the market share too much, which was what the market was afraid of. And now with the sort of a growth which we're talking of, at least a top line growth of about 20% CAGR over the next 3 years. I mean, the way I see Varun Beverage moving from here is, in fact, I have a price target of about 612 over the next 9 to 12 months, based on the EPS of about 12 rupees for calendar year 26.
And Mr. Baliga, let's talk about some of the recent listings. We've seen a crazy exuberance, that up move in Meesho today. Another stock that's doing very well is Brainbees, or First Cry as we informally know it. They've incorporated a wholly owned subsidiary in the USA, and that's the market that they're foraying into. Any view on either of these stocks or any recent listed IPOs that you have liked?
No, Meesho, in fact, I find it a bit expensive at the current level. So I will not really go out and buy fresh. I mean, those who have possibly got allotment, I think it's a good sort of a chance to book at these levels and possibly wait for lower levels to buy in.
Okay, and any view on Brainbees on the back of this US foray of theirs?
No, I've not tracked that stock, so a bit difficult for me to really comment on that.
Okay, no worries. Also talking about some other sectors that are under deep pressure today following Nifty Realty, it's PSU banks. Kunal, the same story I'm sure that applies to Realty doesn't apply to PSU banks over here. Would you be tempted to buy anything from this space, given that the cuts here have been significant, a buy on dips opportunity if you're spotting anywhere?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, for PSU banks, it will be a completely different approach and perspective altogether, because they were the performing sectors in the last 3 to 4 months. And now there is a point where these stocks and the sector is going to a mean reversion. Now, in the near term charts, we've seen that broadly a 50 DMA towards, say, broad 100-day moving average retracement is a good enough band where stocks and sectors, they tend to complete their short-term corrective phase and then get back into the winning ways, or the higher side of the uptrend. That level for the PSU banking index is just around that 8,000 level. So right now we are almost at 8,200 mark for the Nifty PSU bank index. Maybe another couple of percentage points drop in the index, and that's where we may try to hit the band just around that 50 to 100 moving average in between for the PSU banking index. That, I believe, could be a good trading opportunity, where the risk reward will be almost like 1:2.5, 1:3 for many of the PSU banking names. So bullish on the sector, but maybe just about a couple of percentage points, and the risk reward would be almost more than 1:2 for many of the PSU banking names.
Okay. And Kunal, with regard to the move on some of the pump stocks, Shakti Pumps, Oswal Pumps, we've seen last few days very, very strong moves by both of these, likely on the back of fundamental reasons, frankly, more than technical. You have PM Kusum 2, which is expected to get launched early January, and maybe that's why those stocks are in focus. View on charts?
Yeah, the last 4 days, Shakti Pumps has moved more than 50%, from 550 to
Correct.
almost 800 so far. So it's been fantastic in terms of the price uptrend. Now, difficult to call in a buy at current levels for these stocks after such kind of a steep up move when you look at this from a trading play. But yeah, this tells you that the flow or the participation levels from the interest perspective have garnered back into these pump stocks. And that's what I would believe, that over the last 4-5 days, we've seen that kind of a price and volume action. I would sense that we are now looking at a point where maybe a 5% to 7% drop on a name like Shakti Pump. So for example, from those 775, 780 levels where the stock is trading, assumingly if you get this at say 720 kind of a band, then I think it could be a good starting point where traders will look to accumulate, because such kind of strong volumes in the last 4-5 days generally are indication that you're looking at a major trend reversal for these stocks.
Ambareesh, do you at all track these?
Yeah, in fact, we have been bullish on Shakti Pumps for a while. In fact, we started buying this stock at levels of about 750, 770. I mean, looking at the sort of replacement demand which is there, a number of diesel pumps, if I'm not wrong, the number is close to about, I think, 80 lakh diesel pumps would be replaced with solar. And a decent amount of, that demand would come to Shakti, looking at the sort of order flows which have been coming from the government. But despite all this good news, I mean, we had seen the stock correct very sharply to levels closer to about 550, which was quite unexplained. Although we had said a buy at 750 plus levels, we did average out at levels of closer to 550. But with this sort of a nearly 50% sort of a move in the last couple of days, I mean, clearly it is a chance to book some profits on the stocks which you have bought at lower levels. But I would say look at it from a longer term. But because of the way it has moved up like this, if you're bought at lower levels, book some profits and again wait for a small dip to buy back.
Okay, Mr. Baliga, appreciate that view. Thank you so much for your time today. About a minute and a half left for the day to wind down, and I'm going to take it across to my colleague Ashesha, who's waiting by with